I'm an executive producer essentially, so I come up with ideas, pitch them to channels and work with writers and all the other crew on a team to try and put programmes on television. I started in documentaries. That was very much a passion of mine, to be a documentary director, and I had a great time doing that for 10 years, but I was also a big fan of movies and drama at the same time, so I always had a secret desire to try and do some fiction on the side, I suppose, and I was lucky enough to start working in documentary in the space between documentary and drama, so drama documentaries, factually inspired drama, and things that actually the dramas I've made have mostly been commissioned out of documentary departments. So the first scripted piece I did was a film called Blackout that was actually it was a documentary commission from Channel 4 documentary department to make a film. Really, the starting point of that conversation was a factual idea about a crisis of energy in Britain and what might happen if the lights went out. Once we'd got our hands on the commission, we smuggled in more and more drama, and it ultimately became a piece that sort of started as something that felt like a what-if documentary, I suppose, but became a dramatic piece over the course of the hour and 15 minutes it ran for. And I think that became a platform then to say, look, we can do drama, and we could doing it at a kind of lower budget, I suppose, and in a more unusual way than traditional drama departments had done. So we were very lucky on the back of that. It did well for Channel 4, and we got an opportunity then to think about other kinds of drama we could do in that kind of space. It's interesting to me, as someone who straddles both genres, I suppose, of documentary and drama, that the storytelling at the heart of them is similar, actually. You're often interested in the same things, which are about conflict and emotion and the things that speak to all of us as stories now. They're very often universal stories, but there's something about them that means there's a way, something in the ether, that there is a reason to tell those stories now, I suppose. And I think at the same time, sometimes documentary can take you to places drama can't. There are some stories stranger than fiction that if you try to make a fiction, people wouldn't believe them, and I think documentary is often at its best in those places. At the same time, drama can allow you to access people's inner worlds, I think, in a way that documentary does differently, and it can find an emotional connection, or you can find a way to take stories that you've come across in the documentary or real-world landscape and synthesize them into something that's got more power sometimes, I think, in terms of speaking to an audience. So I came across a story of somebody who had their webcam hacked, and I thought that was extraordinary that could happen, that unbeknownst to all of us, we've all got a webcam sitting in our home, more than one probably. And I don't think anyone, including me, had realised really that was something that was hackable, and that we could have inadvertently stumbled into a sort of 1984 scenario of a all-seeing eye in everybody's home. It's a very difficult question, I think, to figure out how 40-something guys make a appealing programme for a teenage audience. And I think we were very mindful that we didn't have all the answers to that. So actually we spent quite a lot of time in the making of it talking to charities, and they put us in touch with kids who'd experienced cyberbullying. We spent quite a lot of time just figuring out with them what bothered them, what were the issues in their lives. And also we had a brilliant script reader in the form of the director's daughter, who was 17, and a very harsh critic in a very helpful way. Casting is a massive part of the success of any drama. We were very lucky with Cyberbully to get Maisie Williams. I was a big Game of Thrones fan at the time, which is my geeky side, and I think we were only in season 2 by then, so she was a sort of prominent figure in it, but it hadn't become the global sort of behemoth it is now. So the question of where can we find a 16-year-old who could carry an entire hour of TV was a daunting question. But we sent off the script. I'd seen her, I thought maybe she'd be interested. She certainly got the acting chops from what I'd seen. She was great. She came in, she read for the piece. There was, once we'd seen her read, there was no other candidates really. It was an incredibly easy decision to cast her, and we were thrilled to get her. I'm not a writer, I'm an executive producer, and I think, I suppose that one of the things I always look for in stories is a sense that I can ask myself the question, what would I do in that situation? And I think that mantra is a really useful, universal tool. I apply that to documentaries and why I might make something and why someone might want to watch it. But particularly for drama, I think, where you're trying to find something universal that's also got a powerful story hook, and thinking about that, I think, is a really good litmus test as to whether the scenario you're building is going to be something that you could have a framework that's going to speak to people about conflicts of the human heart, I suppose, which is the kind of essence of all drama. There are two ways to approach it. Again, I think on the one hand, you need to be mindful of the zeitgeist. You know, what are we all thinking about at the moment? And again, if I was a young person, I'm not, but the things that I worry about for young people and my own children are things like, you know, inequality, the housing gap, debt. You know, they feel things that are very now, but there's also the perennials, love, sex. How are those things being changed through our changing world, I suppose? And of course, technology is a huge part of that at the moment, and in lots of ways moving faster than we can keep up. My experience of working with writers is, again, comes from a documentary place more than anything, and it's usually inspired by some sort of real-world story, whether we're telling that as it happened or it's a synthesis of that. And I think what I like to do with writers is I get excited about certain aspects of things. Sometimes it's a high concept way of doing form. Sometimes it's one particular aspect that I think is a great starting point for a scene. And I like to offer up those things to writers and say, I've got a starting point of an idea, I've got a bit of a theme that it could speak to, and I've got something in the real world that feels like we should make this now. Have a think about that. What might you bring to that in terms of a character? I think, you know, the best writers are usually starting from a point of view of character and developing a world from that. And I think as an executive, I'm both helpful in that I probably don't do that as much as they do, but also probably quite irritating. You know, I think as a writer, I'm not always talking the same language, but I hope that somehow by bringing that, which is somehow a sense of commerciality to it, I suppose, what's the hook that I think might pull an audience through this story,